States, would you say that racism has an impact on the higher rate in the United States than any other country in the world?
Racism? That I have no clue. No clue. For racism to have an effect, then that would mean that we'd have to have a high rate of interracial murders. Do you know if we have a high rate of interracial murders?
We do. I mean.
But I mean, is it disproportionate? I mean, because in our culture we have a lot of different races. You know what I'm saying?
I think it's hard to find statistics like that because
Yeah.
you could find I could find any statistics that'll back up what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really hard to tell. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is, do you think that racism is still a huge problem in the United States to the point where that could be a main reason why there's so many gun-related deaths?
In that case, no, absolutely not. I think. I just think, as I was saying before, we just had a violent culture. We've always had a violent culture. We've had a violent culture since before we had race problems. You know, I mean, if you go back to, if you want to trace our history back to Christopher Columbus, from the day white settlers landed in North America, violence has dominated North America, and it seemed to really settle in America. Now, if you look at America and Central America and Mexico, you see a lot of other violent problems there. Now, I don't know if Mexico has less violence than the United States. I believe it has more. I don't know. Why Canada has less violence, I just don't understand. I don't know. But race, no, I don't think race is a reason why our culture is more violent. I think our culture is more violent, and as a result, we're going to have more racial problems between races.
I think we can reduce the violence in guns. Like, do you think the government's doing enough, or do you think by restricting gun use?
I don't think the government's doing enough. I mean, I think that the Constitution protects everybody's right to own a gun is the most ridiculous thing in the world, okay? I'm not saying that people don't have a right to own guns. What I'm saying is local governments and state governments should have the right to be able to decide whether or not there's a gun control problem, and if so, how to best deal with it, all right? One of the problems with our federal government is when it tries to make laws like that, and the problems are so different throughout so many different demographics, throughout so many different states, it's not a one-size-fits-all policy. So it's just stupid. Let the states, let the counties decide. If the county wants to decide, hey, nobody living in this county is allowed to have a gun, then let the county decide that. Because the people ultimately are going to be electing the officials in their county. That's the way I feel. I'll tell you one thing. I don't want guns in my neighborhood. I think it would be absolutely ridiculous for anyone in my neighborhood to have a gun in their home. Like the fact that, you know, I'm going to have a family one day living in a neighborhood that anyone in that neighborhood is allowed to have a gun in their house in suburbia. What's the point? Do you understand what I'm saying? How does that possibly benefit anybody in any imaginable situation whatsoever? It doesn't.
You know, everybody wants to buy their gun for their own personal protection, but if that's the only reason anybody's buying a gun, then we have to use it.
Yeah, it's got that circular argument, you know, and I think it would be far more effective to just get a dog or a security system, you know. Yeah. The security system is less likely, you know, a 3-year-old's less likely to pick up a security system and kill his best friend playing with it, you know. Anyway, keep going.
What about the NRA? There's arguments that the NRA, of course, they're always trying to promote gun safety, but then at the same time, people say that the NRA promotes maliciousness.
You know, what I see of the NRA is I see an example of when the NRA is caustic and bombastic, and then somebody puts it on a news show and says, "Can you believe what the NRA is saying?" So, I don't follow the NRA, I don't listen to the NRA, I don't know enough about them. I think what I see, the only thing I know about the NRA is the way in which people react to the NRA, if that makes sense. So in that sense, I'm not ready to demonize them. They're a lobbying group. They're a lobbying group that's trying to protect the best interest of individuals, and they are what they are, and I hate to use that cliche, but they're just, you know, we have lobbying groups because we have a demographic society, and sorry, not a democratic society. They're just a result, they're nothing more than a reflection of people's opinion within the United States. So I'm not going to demonize the NRA. If they are caustic and overly aggressive at times, that's only because the people who support the NRA are cautious, underly cautious as well. That makes sense.
Do you think that the drug trade in the United States is one of the leading causes of gun-related deaths?
Jeez. I have no clue. I don't know those statistics. What I would say is this. What I imagine to be the case is any violence that happens as a result of the drug trade happens between members of the drug trade. So in that sense, it's not something I'd be particularly concerned about. I know that sounds bad, but if if drug traffickers want to kill themselves, every time a drug trafficker kills another drug trafficker, that's one less drug trafficker. That's the way I see it.
How about poverty? Yeah, I mean, that's where a lot of the drug trafficking comes from. Somebody can't afford to feed their family, so they have to go out and sell crack or something so that they can feed their kids, something like that. Is that one of the bigger reasons why there's gun-related deaths? A lot of times you see inner city where everybody's cracked together. Some guy is some drug dealer shoots another. I'm not saying that's the leading cause.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I'd like to see the statistics of the number of gun deaths per capita in urban areas versus number of gun deaths per capita in rural areas. I'm not going to I'm not just going to assume that there's a high percentage of gun deaths per capita in urban areas. That seems to be, that always seems to be a suggestion somewhere, wherever political or socio-economic suggestions sort of come from. But I'm not ready to just assume that, I don't know.
Do you think the Second Amendment should be restricted just to hunting rifles as opposed to assault rifles and stuff like blocks?
No, not necessarily. I don't think the Second Amendment should be restricted to anything. I think the Second Amendment should be written off the books entirely. You know what I'm saying? And then, but when I say that, I don't mean that guns should be out. What I mean is that local governments should be able to make their own gun laws. That's what I believe.
Do you think that there are certain circumstances where people should be allowed to have an assault rifle or a 30-round clip or something like that in their house? I can't say that it really does have a purpose, but you can't really think off the top of your head of a useful purpose for some guy with a 9mm with a 50-round clip hidden under his bed.
See, here's the deal. Do I think, and when we say that, do I think a person should be able to have that? In Canada, absolutely. Absolutely. But Canada is not overrun by gun violence. Do you know what I'm saying? America is. So it's just silly to say, okay, one of the biggest problems we have, this epidemic in the United States, gun violence exists. Yet at the same time, it's important for us to defend to the death somebody's right to have an assault rifle when there is simply no good argument for why they should have an assault rifle, right? So you have to balance the pros and the cons. Ultimately, it would be great if we would allow somebody to have an assault rifle. And, you know, theoretically, that would be great if we lived in a society in which somebody could have that. Theoretically, it would be even better if we lived in a world where such things